Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. Today's episode brings us the Kickass husband and wife duo, Steph and Brandon Tuss, who took their love of teaching and forged an unbreakable bond together as successful business partners and best friends for life. Steph Tuss is the CEO of multimillion-dollar global consulting company Life Is Now, Inc. Steph discovered her love for teaching at a young age, beginning her career as an educator. She has a master's degree in holistic nutrition and has her own practice to help families. She hired David Neagle and his team at Life Is Now as her health practices business coach. She sold her business at the age of 33 and joined Life Is Now as the director of sales in 2009 before taking the CEO role on in 2016. Brandon Tuss is the director of podcasting for Life Is Now, whose show, The Successful Mind Podcast, helps people gain clarity around what it takes to adequately shape their minds and crush it in both life and business. Brandon started off with a successful career as an elementary school teacher, but was later led to find his true calling in the self-improvement industry. Over the last decade, he has continued his mission to help others. They took their common love of teaching, education, and empowering others and have built a deep and abiding relationship that has made them better together forever. Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. We are so excited to have a dynamic duo with us today. We are celebrating a lot today because this is our very first interview in what you see as Phoenix, which is our new Airstream trailer, because the last one, as you know, Maynard, went up in flames in July, so Phoenix rose out of the ashes, and we get to welcome Brandon and Steph Tuss, who are joining us from North Carolina. We're on the shores of Lake Norman, but first of all, welcome. We're glad you're here. You're breaking in Phoenix for our first interview.
So
live.
Amazing. Thank you. This is lovely. We absolutely are so privileged to be here.
We're so grateful.
It's actually fun to be back in a studio. I think that it's been a long time for us.
Yeah, we're not in a living room with a green screen.
Yeah,
with a picture of what Maynard used to look like behind us. It was kind of sad.
Yeah, all bad. Well, Phoenix is beautiful.
Thank you. And the cool thing that I didn't know until after we spoke and the first time with you all is that you are fellow Airstreamers, and I think that's quite notable. And how long has that been a passion of yours? I'm curious.
We got our Airstream in October of last year, so we've been Airstreaming for about almost a year.
Yep.
Okay.
Coming up on our 1-year anniversary with our
we've
Airstream.
taken 15 trips.
We have.
15
We've
or
done a
16
cross-country
trips.
trip.
Yeah.
We've gone to the Florida coast.
Yeah, been to Montana. Like we've put
We've
some
used
miles
it. Yeah,
on
we've
our
used it
resume.
hard. Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Well, good. We're so glad to have you here today and welcome you to the Kickass Couples Podcast. And we like to start out kind of with the first question for everybody is I'd like to know from both of you, you can either one may start, what makes you, actually Steph, since I'm looking right at you, Steph, what do you think makes you all a kick-ass couple?
You know, I never considered us a kick-ass couple, honestly. I just considered us, right? Like we always just did our own thing. We've always kind of been the black sheep in all of our families. We've always kind of tested the boundaries. So it was kind of like, you know, we're just a team. And I think that team, that, we share the same value system, we're on the same page, we have great communication. I think that would probably be some of the major things that make us a kick-ass couple. But it's interesting because even being invited here, I'm like, I never considered us a kick-ass couple, but we really are. Like, I'll own that.
I'm not denying that.
You gotta
I'll own
lean into
we really
it.
are
From
now.
those who introduced us to you, they go, "Oh, these guys are so kick-ass. You got to meet them."
And we have so much fun together.
We do.
I mean, it's just super grateful. Yeah,
Awesome.
super grateful.
All right, Brandon, I'm going to turn to you. What do you think makes you? What would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would add that it's like Steph said, it's always just been us. We met as school teachers way back in a former life, and I remember the first time I laid eyes on her, and I walked into that library, and I was like, "Whoa, who is that?" She's pretty amazing, and immediately I started making fun of her, which is my way of showing love, is to kind of poke fun and be sarcastic. And one day she just threw it right back at me, and she cut me down a little bit. And at that moment, I'm like, yeah, she's a keeper right there. She can take it, and she can also
That
give
was
it.
the barometer, huh?
That was,
Ooh,
yeah.
She can take it and dish it
She
back.
totally
She's
can.
my girl.
Yeah, she is. And from there, it was just a whirlwind. And we just always have had fun. We both have this strong sense of adventure. Like, we want to just experience everything. Steph is a huge experience junkie, and I love getting out there and doing, like camping or going on cruises or going overseas on a trip. And, our kids grew up in that life. They love being a part of all the experiences we have, and I think that's what really Steph brings to the table for me, is just she's always willing to try something once. She's not I don't know about that. And when she says yes, her yes is firm. Like, she sticks to the plan. She can deviate, of course. That's something I've learned, is that I need to deviate more sometimes, but she really is one of those people that she sort of drives the train. I mean, she is the yes person. I'm a yes after a little bit.
Okay.
I love it. So I hear you guys saying that really teamwork and fun and adventure is what really makes you kick ass. It's what really keeps you guys moving forward in your relationship, and that's fun.
I think it's super important that we share the same value system. The things that are important to me are the things that are important to him. I just think, when I see breakdowns in relationships, generally you've got couples who have a differing value system, or they grow apart. And we've been together for 23 years, been through 3 career changes, multiple life changes. And I think it's just like our values and our beliefs that keep us really, really strong.
Really grounded.
Yes, really grounded. That's a great terminology, very much.
Well, I always find it interesting in relationships when we talk a little bit about our families of origin, because I really believe that we are products of the people who raised us. And sometimes, as you well know, that can be a really positive experience, or it can sadly be a negative experience. And so I'm just curious, I'm going to ask you first, Brandon.
Sure.
What did love look like in your family when you were growing up? How was it expressed when you were a child?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I kind of had a feeling this one was coming. So what's interesting about that is my mom's side of the family was very, very loving. They were very affectionate. They really did a lot of like personal touch, a lot of hugs, and those sorts of things. And I would get that from that side of the family. Then from my dad's side of the family, next to none at all. So it was kind of walking that balance, and my mom trying to be affectionate with me, but I leaned more towards my dad's side of how love was shown. So I really didn't believe in the hugs, didn't believe in the affection, didn't really want any part of that. I was just happy being my own person. And that actually was somewhat of an issue when we got together, because one of the things that Steph, one of her love languages is personal touch, and I was really closed off to it. So for me, trying to figure out how best to change who I was, to be more open and honest and bring that intimacy into the relationship. But to go back to your initial question, my family really didn't show, they showed love through actions. They didn't show love through, I'm going to hug you, I'm going to tell you how good you are, I'm just going to maybe get you this toy or something along those lines. So that's really how I was modeled that, and I wanted to change that for my daughters and for our relationship.
Yeah. So you didn't see it expressed very much at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
So that does later in life come back to you when you find someone who sounds like is maybe a little bit your opposite.
Yes,
and
very
that
much.
could be Steph's love language. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more
Sure.
later. But I hear you. How about you, Steph? Tell me a little bit about what love looked like in your family when you were growing up, how it was expressed.
So love in my family was pretty dysfunctional as well. I'm an adult. What is it? I've said this a million times. My father was an alcoholic. He got sober when I was 16. We have a great relationship now, but when I was growing up, the mood in my house was very tenuous. It was very, very stressful. There was a lot of conflict. And my mom was highly affectionate. So I feel like my mom was an example of showering with love, but there was always strings attached. So I grew up in a very manipulative environment, meaning like love was never free. There was always strings attached, or there was always something that could go, like you couldn't trust the adults in your life. So I feel like my outlook on it as I was growing up was to collect all the things that I didn't want to be, do, or have, and not be, do, or have those when I was an adult. So it almost gave me a contrast of my mom, who was really affectionate, which I love, and I do love affection. I love to give affection. I'm very affectionate with my kids, but also the parts of it that aren't healthy, right? The codependency that comes with growing up in an alcoholic environment. I had to really do a lot of work on myself to understand what was going on and why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, to not bring that over into my relationship with me.
Sure.
So it sounds like you guys each had some different experiences. So, the magic of coming together in a relationship, how did you guys meld those two backgrounds into one that's worked, obviously it seems so well, for 23 years? How did you approach weaving those two realities and backgrounds together?
I think it was, I was one of those, unconscious competents where I was just kind of muddling my way through life. I did get some great values from my parents. It wasn't all like craziness and dysfunction. But I was always deeply introspective of myself. So even when I was in college, I was reading self-help books. I was seeing a therapist. I have a strong value in self-improvement, in that you can change things that you don't like or that you don't want to experience anymore. So I remember, like, in the first couple of years of marriage, there were some really rough spots. And I said, either we're for each other or we're against each other. There's no in between. So either we need to grow together or we need to be apart. And I think that that's what I mean when I say that I feel like we're a rock star couple, because we share the same value system, and a big part of that value system is personal growth and always trying to be a better person in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
I love hearing that. I think personal growth is such an important factor in relationships. And I think enough of us don't realize that or come to that until we're a little bit older and we've matured and we've grown up a little bit, and then we realize what an impact that can make on our relationships. So I appreciate you sharing that with our listeners.
Yeah, good stuff. And so, we have 14 pillars that we think are kind of the key. There's one in front of you, a copy of that. And we think of those 14, we have 3 that we think are kind of foundational, and we call those the 3 C's. And the first of those C's is commitment. And so I'd love to, Steph, start with you and say, what does commitment look like in the relationship that you all have together? How would you define it? How does it show up? And if you had to describe what commitment looks like to you.
I think what commitment looks like to me is that our relationship is based on agreements. We make agreements all the time, right? So can we make an agreement that when this happens, we don't respond this way again? Or can we make an agreement that when we're dealing with the kids, this happens? So it's very much tied to agreements. And I think agreements play a big part in commitment, because it's about making a decision, right? We're deciding that we're doing this together and we're going to do it the best way we possibly can. And once you decide, there's no other option. You've decided, you're committed, right? I mean, everybody in every marriage has had rough times where their brain goes to, oh, I wonder what it would just be like to be alone, right? I mean, even if you whisper it in your secret thoughts, you know you have those voices in the back of your head, right? But when you've made a commitment to yourself, to who you want to be, and you've made a commitment to another person to communicate honestly about what's going on, then that voice gets quieter and quieter because you know there's always a solution. So commitment to me means focusing on the positive, focusing on the solutions, and not focusing on all the things that could be wrong at the time. Does that make sense?
That's a great focus. What I hear you saying is you're focusing on, when you get agreement, you're agreeing how you're going to do something and that you'll support each other in that. So that question is off the table.
Right.
So you're not pulling at opposite ends of the rope, but that you're working through and focusing on what the inherent good is and what can be, as opposed to looking at things that should be different and, you know, magnifying the good and focusing on what you have together.
Right. You have a choice. You have a
Yeah.
choice in how you experience things. Like, you see a pair of socks on the floor, you can either focus on this, lazy, crappy, unthoughtful person that left his socks on the floor, or you can just pick the socks up and put them away and focus on the amazing, loving husband that you have sleeping next to you in bed at night. So I really think that you have personal responsibility and personal choice in how you both
Sure.
respond and or how you experience and how you react to things
Right.
within a relationship.
That's great. I love that. Well, how would you add to that, or what do you feel commitment looks like in your relationship
For
with
me,
Steph?
for me, commitment means committing to getting it right. And that means committing to growing, like you spoke
Like
about earlier.
always bettering your best,
Always
kind of,
bettering
yeah.
your best. It's a
Yeah.
mantra that we use a lot in our family. Always bettering your best. I mean, there's days when, like you said, you just want to be frustrated and angry and you want to just mail it in. But for me, commitment, when I set my mind to something, I am committed to seeing it through. And it's gotten me in trouble sometimes because I don't often deviate from the plan. But when I do start to recognize that there is something that I'm working towards always, I'm never going to be perfect, and we've acknowledged that. We're not going to ever get it 100% right. But if we commit to one another that we're going to continue to grow, then good things are going to come out of that. And there was a time when, Steph was lapping me. I was falling behind as far as growth was concerned, and she was leaps and bounds, making quantum leaps in her life, doing the work, putting in the time to better herself. And I was just kind of riding her coattails and thinking, well, I don't really buy into all the personal growth stuff, but I'll just hang out and see how this shakes out. And we had some conversations around, like you said, you're either with me or you're not, and it really woke me up. And it was a hard conversation to have. And at that moment, I said, I need to commit to being better, being a better person. Because what I was doing was I was recreating basically my father. I was becoming my dad. And my dad has good qualities. He's given me, good work ethic and those sorts of solid pieces that I got as a kid. But he wasn't around a lot, and he was angry a lot. And I was embodying that. So we talk in our company about this like generational J curve, and it's like this marble that floats around in the J down on the bottom. And that's where I was. I was in that position where I was just going to repeat mistakes. And I didn't want to do that anymore. So for me, commitment is sticking it through, getting it right, and always working towards what's best for both of us.
Yeah, a lot of great pearls, and I love the concept. I'm sure we'll repeat it and share.
to-
Bettering your best.
Bettering your best.
Got to better your best, and hanging out in the wrong part of the J there. Right?
That's right.
You roll a little up and you roll a little back. All right, how do we get the inertia to get up
That's
that tall,
exactly right.
that steep climb, right? That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is a great segue into our second pillar that we believe is super important in a relationship, and that's communication. As you well know, it just plays a huge role in how we treat each other, how we respond to each other, how we interact with each other. So I'm curious, what does communication look like in your relationship? How do you make time to communicate? You're both really busy and probably get sucked into your vortexes, and you kind of forget about each other from time to time.
And we also work in the same company. So our conversations have to have, like, are we having a conversation as CEO to
Right.
employee, or are we having a conversation that's, husband and wife? So
Good
we
point.
learned that quite early as
We
well.
did.
Like, wait a second, what's my role here? Am I just supposed to listen to you, or am I supposed to help problem solve? So
Yeah, like what role am I playing
Yes.
in this moment? Like
Yes.
pause, who am I? Am I spouse or am
Yeah.
I just a
and
venting
we
machine?
just had this conversation the other day.
Yeah.
He's like, I need you to be just my wife right now, and I need you to just listen to what I have to say, and you don't even need to say anything about it. I'm like,
'Cause I'm
okay.
a fixer, right?
I know
I
what I
wanna
need to
fix it.
do. I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
So I think communication, and I'm a huge communicator. Like, I'm the CEO of a company. It's one of our like main tenets of radical candor, communication within our team, and we have a fantastic team. Communication is really important to me. My kids will probably laugh when they hear this podcast because I've been the person to put them in a room together and say, all right, we're going to talk it out. Let's see what's going on because, and just like talk, just communicate about it. So I think communication shows up for me in making sure that we each know what role we're in when we're communicating. That's really big. That's caused a lot of problems for us in the past, where I'm thinking that he's talking to me in business mode, so I go into problem solving and giving suggestions, and that's actually not what he needs in that moment, and vice versa. But I think communication means taking responsibility for your own feelings. Like, anything that I feel is not because of anything he's done to me. It's because of something within myself that's being triggered, and vice versa. So, I can say to him, I'm feeling this right now. I know it's not you. I'm working myself through it, but let's talk about how we can do this different next time. Like, and just like taking responsibility for your own feelings, and then communicating that to your spouse, I think is really important. But the roles thing was a big one for us, I have to say.
And I'm sure there are so many of our listeners who work together and probably have a lot of the same issues. So I really appreciate you saying that clarification is important.
Yes.
What role am I playing right
Yes.
now? How about for you?
Yeah, I mean,
Brandon?
for me, I love this conversation because I put a box around this one as something I need to work on. Like, I'm always working. You would not think someone as loquacious as myself would have a problem communicating, but it's that communicating with your spouse is much different than being funny in a room full of people. I'm the class clown. I'm the comedian. I'm the one that makes people laugh. But when it gets down to it, and it boils down to just being open and honest, just being able to, and I'm a sweep it under the rug, or was a sweep it under the rug kind of person. I would have a horrible, we'd have a little blow up, dust up, and I would just sweep it under the rug, and I'd come back and pretend as if it didn't happen. And Steph, beautifully would remind me, no, that is not how we're going to do this. We're going to be honest. We're going to sit down. We're going to have this conversation. This happened. What can we learn from it? Whereas I just wanted to move on because that was my dad's pattern, that was my mom's pattern. The elephant in the room is not going to be discussed. So for me, it was understanding that I'm not alone in this. I have to be sensitive of everyone else's feelings and not just be myself, and start thinking a little bit about what is it going to take to be able to be a stronger communicator. And like I said, I'm working on it every single day.
Yeah, and I think it's about honoring each other's communication style too, right? So like if something happens, I'm not ready to talk about it right away. I've got to think about it. Like, I think through things. I'm very, I choose my words carefully. I'm not a reactionary at all. It's just not within me to be reactionary. So if something happens, him giving me the space to really figure out how I want to have this conversation, knowing that if I don't want to have the conversation with him right now, it doesn't mean anything about him. And him, you like to think about it as well. So you like space. You like to let the trigger kind of go first before we come at it. So it kind of goes both ways, where we have an agreement that we're going to discuss things, but we also have an agreement that might take some time. And it might not follow the rule of don't go to bed angry. Sometimes we go to bed angry because we need the space to be able to figure out what actually happened so that we can come together and have a productive conversation about it. I also think communication ties in with number 6, with intimacy, because I think to really communicate honestly, you've got to be vulnerable, right? There has to be that level of intimacy between the two of you.
Right.
And that's I think what we worked on really early on in our relationship with that vulnerability. I mean, that's why people put up boxes, right? They feel like they have to put a protective layer up. It is scary.
Hard to be vulnerable with our spouses.
Yeah.
But I love that you figure out communication styles with each other. Usually one's a pursuer and one is a retreater. That's what we found, I think, most
Typically,
when we
yeah.
interview people.
But it sounds like both you all are distancers, meaning when there's a dust up that happens, you want to. I think what you shared, Steph, is you want to take some time, you want to think about it, what's the best way to go. And Brandon, you're going, I'd just rather not deal with it and forget about it and move on. Like
Moving on, next.
Or you used to
Yeah.
could.
Used to, yes.
Used to could
Yes.
do that. And so it's interesting because typically one person, and I would be the pursuer, it's like, hey, let's talk about this. I want to figure it out. Come on, it's now while it's fresh. And Kim is a lot like, I want to think about it. Maybe a day, half a day, could be 2 or 3 days. I'll let you know when I'm ready.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it, but I need to process.
Yep.
So let me process. And so, but you figure out a dance. And you made the comment earlier about not going to bed angry. And it's funny, I was mentioning another couple we interviewed that were married 62 years. And they said, we never do that. And that worked for them. But it's kind of I don't want to say a wives' tale, but it works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. And it doesn't matter. There are hard and fast rules where, like, we're not going to hit each other, we're not going to put our hands on each other. Everybody has those hard and fast rules, but I think the whole thing about not going to bed angry is you want to handle the issue when it's the best time for the relationship for it to be handled. It's us, not I or you, but us. And so if it's good for us, it's going to win for everybody.
Yep.
So we kind of dispel that.
The breaking myth busting right here.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
while we're at it, why don't we? Love means never having to say you're sorry, because I say I'm sorry at least 100 times a week. So let's just get oh man, I not just necessarily to you, but mostly in my life. It's like one of those
So
things
hard on
where
yourself.
I know I am. It's one of those things. But one thing I did want to go back to with communication that I think is really good is that I wanted to solve problems. Like when Steph was talking about, I need you to just be. Just listen to me right now. I have gotten really good and intuitive about understanding when I should speak and when I shouldn't. And I can tell when she's in a mode where she just needs to be heard and I can listen. Before, I would interrupt, I would blurt in, I would cut off, I would put up a wall. And I've learned in the past 2 or 3 years with therapy and all these sorts of things to be able to speak when the time is right. I now know her communicative
Well, you asked
dance.
too. Do you need me to help you solve this, or do I
Yes.
just
Yeah, and I think
just
that's
want
really
you to
helpful.
listen? Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, but yet it's so difficult.
Why is that so?
And that's a good
For
question.
everyone, really.
Well, and I
It's
want to
not
follow
modeled
up on
for
that.
you, It's
Yeah, that's huge because I think you guys just touched on one of the biggest issues is when someone is struggling or has a frustration and it may have nothing to do with you, asking, what do you need? How can I best support you right now? One of the
In this
things
moment.
in this
How
moment,
can I-
one of the things we talk about a lot is at any point in time, you got to know what your spouse's biggest need is at that time. It doesn't mean it's going to be that way for a year. It might be a day, an hour, a week, a month, a season. But how can I best support you right now? And that could be when an issue dusts up. But if you don't know and you're like, okay, I'm going to come in and do what I always do, that's not really what needs to happen to best support that person that you love. So you guys talk about that, and it's like, what do you need? How do you need me to communicate with you right now?
Yeah.
For whatever we're in, or you're in, or I'm in, or another family member might be in, one of our children, right?
Yeah.
How can we do that? And I think, and that's a lot of, you talked about contracting and negotiating. Let's agree what we're going to do.
Agreements, yep.
What agreements do we need to handle this the best for us or those that we're trying to serve? And so you guys have brought some great stuff. When it comes to creating a kick-ass marriage, do you ever wonder what you could be doing better? Have you ever thought how helpful it would be to be a part of a like-minded community of other imperfect couples who want to level up in their number one relationship? Come visit Kickass Couples Nation, where you can talk with people just like you who are looking for ways to invest in and increase their joy, commitment, and fulfillment in their most important human relationship. You'll have access to a team of licensed marriage therapists, coaches, articles, podcasts, live webinars, and more. Just visit MatthewPHoffman.com so you can learn more about a community that's ready to help you level up. That's MatthewPHoffman.com so you can become of the growing Kick-Ass Couples Nation right now. That kind of goes into then our third C, which is conflict resolution. And people says, oh, we never argue about anything, I think, well, you're just not telling the truth. Because, and it might not be anything the other person did. It could be just you had a day at work and someone rubbed you the wrong way, and then your spouse walks in and they get peppered, right, with all the fodder that came out of what happened to you. So I'm going to start with you. When the conflicts arise, how do you guys handle that in your relationship? How do you approach it?
So we're both highly conflict averse, based on our childhood drama. We've both learned to fly under the radar and avoid conflict as much as possible. But that's not possible when you have a role like I have, because there's conflict everywhere. So part of it for me was kind of really looking at finding the gift in the conflict. Like, okay, this is a conflict, this happened. Like, there's always a gift in it. So even though you can't see it right away, you might not see it for days, you might not see it for months, you know that there's something good that's going to come out of it. Not always focusing on this is a bad thing, having that fatalistic thinking where it's all bad, or head in the sand where it's all good. This is, wow, this really sucks right now. And I wonder, like, there's got to be some lesson in this. There's got to be some good in this. So I'm going to go through this really uncomfortable thing. We're going to have it out. Whether that looks like, we're not like combative with each other at all. It's like, I want you to listen to what I have to say. I will listen to what you have to say. We may have to agree to disagree at this point, but let's get it on the table for right now and then figure out how we can move forward so this doesn't happen again. Right? How we can set a new agreement, or what we can learn about each other, or, how I can respond differently to a situation, I think is, it's interesting because we're both so conflict averse, we both kind of retreat inside when there is conflict. So we're both kind of silent treatmenters, right? Like, if I get upset, I get really quiet. When he gets upset, he gets quiet, but he'll, like, you can tell, you've lived with each other for forever, right? Like, we've been together more than we've been apart,
Sure.
like at this point. So it's kind of like saying, okay, well, we're going to be silent for a while, and then we're going to talk about this, and we're going to find, like, what good is going to come from this? Like, what's the lesson here? What's the thing we need to change?
I hear you saying you're always looking for the opportunity within the conflict.
Yes.
And I think that is awesome. I really believe that when conflict arises, there is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow. And I think a lot of people don't see conflict in that light. And when they learn to do that, that's when their marriage really, I think, takes off and they're able to accomplish a lot.
Yeah, it's an invitation. We interviewed a rabbi and his wife, and he said conflict is an invitation.
That's amazing.
To engagement.
That's
And
great.
to learn.
It's an invitation, and you can
Really
either
is.
accept the invitation or you can reject it. And when you say, I'm rejecting your invitation to come together, it doesn't sound that nice. But how have you handled when conflicts have arisen between the two of you?
Well, first of all, that's a great shift, what you had just said about being an invitation, because for me, conflict is something to avoid at all costs. I still get very, very shaken up whenever there's any sort of conflict. Even if somebody's lightly raising their voice to another person, I get really, really charged. Like, I can feel myself vibrating.
We just had this experience. We were doing an event. Can I segue here?
Yeah,
we were
sure,
doing an
absolutely.
event. Ironically enough, I was doing a retreat with seven-figure business owners on how to lead their teams from a really compassionate place and how to have difficult conversations. And while I was having this conversation in the hall, there was a manager like screaming at an employee, and you could hear like him clapping his hands together, and it was just like, it was so jarring. And to witness the room, everybody in the room I think was conflict averse. It was just like, it was so dramatic to listen to this happening outside the doors. And I know you felt it. We made eye contact. I felt it. Like that conflict
Just feels unsafe.
It feels so unsafe. Yeah.
And that's what it is to me, is conflict always felt unsafe to me. Like, it felt like, because I grew up in a small mining town in Montana, and the culture was all about drinking and fighting. That's what it was. I can honestly say I've never been in a fight my entire life. I made up a fight so I could write a 6th grade essay, but that was complete fabrication. Sorry, Mrs. Caney.
Truth comes out.
The truth-telling
Hard
podcast
copy. Here we go.
Yeah. So, but but it was always one of those things where keep your head on a swivel. There's conflict is right around the corner. Kind of scary, like thug type situations. So for me, it was always flying under the radar, always being, just distance yourself from it. And it's going back to the sweeping it under the rug. Like I sweep it under the rug so often that the rug starts to get all these knots in it. And before you know it, I'm tripping over it and I'm falling flat on my face. That's what conflict was to me. It was, let's sweep it under the rug and then it'll eventually blow up. We'll get it out in the open, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. It never went that long, but it was something that I just didn't want to handle in the moment. But I realized that a lot of times if you can just come to your spouse, come to Steph and say, look, I'm struggling with this. I felt this way when you said this, or I am experiencing you as this. And then once I did that, once I changed the language around it, it helped me to be able to be more communicative. Like I said, I'm still working on it tremendously, but it's been helpful to get the language right around it and understanding that we're in this together. We are a team, and I think that's super important.
I think that's key. Just you're on the same team. It's not you versus me. It's us, right?
Yeah.
And it's kindness. We're kind people. We have kind hearts. We're kind to each other. We're not demeaning. We don't poke fun. We don't make fun of or demean in any sort of way. It's like, I love this woman for the person she is and who she's taught me to be a better person, and she's instilled that in our daughters as well. And it's cool to see that can come out of conflict. Like it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't always great at the beginning. It was pretty tough the first few years, because I was going to just slide right into the role of my dad. She does the cleaning, she does the cooking, I sit down and yell at the football game. And that's how it was for a while, and then it's like, this is not working. And it wasn't working for me, it wasn't working for her, so we came to a point like, okay, let's figure this out, and that's when the real work starts.
Yeah, exactly. That's when the real work starts.
And a lot of people nowadays are just cutting and running. They're like, no, I'm not going to put in the work.
I'm not cut out for this, not doing it.
No, we put in a lot of work.
Yeah, plan B. They go,
Yes.
It didn't work. All right. Okay, I can go do something else.
Yeah.
And I think, when you're talking about conflict, what makes it safe in conflict, to know that you can have it, is if there's commitment, you can say, all right, I know that there's no disagreement that's going to have relationship ending power.
Right.
So if that's off the table, I'm free to talk and discuss. And it sounds like you have given each other, through your commitment to the relationship, you know that you're in it for you, so therefore you can figure out what's the best way to address it so you can work through it and diminish it moving forward. And that's gold. That's money. And that's, I think, and it's work. It's not easy. It might be easier to cut and run and restart someplace else, but I think that doesn't make it worthwhile. And you've been doing it for 23 years. We're coming up on 28. Next month.
That's exciting.
Next month, and it's never been better, and it's never been better because we're getting better at the fundamentals every day.
Yeah.
There's no silver bullet. There's no rocks. Take a pill, drink a drink. Doesn't work. But the willingness to have the fundamentals there, and it sounds like you guys have committed to that. So it takes the sting or the worry or the fear. And then it's just about, we got to work at it.
Yeah, well, just to jump in, what was really interesting, it just kind of jarred a memory. When we were first dating, we got into an argument. And in that argument, I thought that it was over. I thought we're breaking up. Because when you have an argument, it's over. There's no coming back from that. And I said, so I guess we're breaking up. And she's like, no. We're not breaking up. We're having an argument. Having arguments can be healthy because it's communicating to get to a common goal. I was completely ready to just mail it all in and be like, yeah, I screwed up. I guess we're done. Bye. And she helped me see the light that said, you know what, this is a normal thing that couples do. We're going to have this argument, we're going to get through it, and then we're going to be better off because of it. But it just reminded me when you were talking about that, about how young we were and how short-sighted my mind was in those moments. But thankfully we stuck it out, and here we are. It's really cool.
I love it. And so one thing I want to also recognize you both for is your ability to accept influence from each other, because that's a huge indicator, really, of the success of any relationship. I mean, especially romantic and life partners, but in business or other, if you're not willing to value someone else's opinions as if they were your own, you're not willing to accept influence from them. And you both have stated that in talking about our 3 C's so far and about some of your family origin and history, is that you're willing, you want to learn, you want to understand, and you want to listen. So that desire is huge, because when you accept that influence, you're really stepping into your partner's shoes, and it brings you closer together.
Yes.
So I just want to give you some kudos and recognize your commitment to that, because that's huge in accepting influence. And just in our discussion so far today, you're doing a wonderful job of passing the torch back and forth, and that's your willingness to accept that influence.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We have 11 other pillars that we believe it takes to make that are essential in a relationship. And to be successful, these 11 other pillars are really important. Is there one, Brandon, that resonates with you other than the first 3 that we just talked about?
I mean, I did my homework before I came into the show. I circled number 14, fun and humor. It's who I am. It's what really turned the tide. I think that and my Levi's maybe turned the tide for Steph. Back when we were just young kids
And
starting out.
Is it the departure that you, Steph?
Yes, it was a
It's always
departure.
it's always the departure. But
my
it really was fun and humor. You know, for me, it's always been something of a defense mechanism for me, but it's also, I love to make people smile, and I love to make Steph laugh. And when Steph is laughing, it takes away from the tremendous stress that she does experience in her job. I mean, being a CEO is not easy, and she's really blossomed in that role. So it's really cool to be able to make her laugh and keep things light, even in the most tense of situations. So, you know, being early since last year, you know, we have an empty nest now because both our daughters are away from the house. It was really odd the first couple of weeks of just
First couple months.
maybe just sitting around, and we didn't really know we had to date again. Like, we had to start dating again after 20 plus years of marriage, because you lived your life for these children for so many years, and now they're out of the house and you're left to just spend time. But once we got through that, and the kids came home, you know, for a weekend, it's like, oh, this is great. Now get out, because we're really enjoying the dating part of things.
You forget about that,
We
don't
were like,
you?
we can go to a movie on a school night.
Right?
Like,
Yeah, we can do whatever we want to do, and you don't have to
go out
worry.
on a Tuesday? No.
Exactly. So, but to get back to your point, for me, it's all about fun and humor, just bringing a light side to it. There's a time to be serious, but for us, there's also a time to laugh and let out that release because of what we do in our work lives.
Yeah, I agree.
How about for you,
Can I pick
Steph?
the same one, or do I have
You
to
can
pick
pick
a different
the
one?
same one. Or if there's another one that
There's
really
another
stands
one
out
that
to
resonates.
you.
What resonates
Well, I mean,
most
yeah.
with you?
You got a tattoo.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
tell us
I
about
have I have trust tattooed on my wrist.
There we go.
For a number of reasons. One is that I've been working really hard on building trust with myself, because I don't think you can trust people. I don't think you can trust God. I don't think you can trust life without trusting yourself first. So trust has been a big thing in my life. I've had trust. I've had trust trampled on a little bit in growing up. So building trust with myself was really big. And I have to say that you're probably right. It's number 4, trust and honesty.
I didn't mean to call you out for your cool tattoo. I just
I know.
love that you carry it with you wherever you go.
Everywhere I go.
It's so perfect.
And it's just a reminder for me to always be a trustworthy person, and to give kind of everyone the benefit of the doubt. To trust people to be people, but to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I think for us, like, I trust Brandon implicitly. He's completely trustworthy. And secondly, we just, our relationship is so much fun. And he does bring so much humor. Like, he brings so much levity, what's the word?
Yeah, levity.
To any environment that we're in. Like, I could be, really stuck in my head trying to figure out a really tough emotional problem, and he'll say something, and it will just change the entire mood, right? Like, it'll just break it, and I'll be able to see something different. But I think trust is probably really, really big for me, in that I know that no matter what happens, no matter, what I say, no matter what I do, that I can trust that he's always going to be there.
Love that.
Yeah,
That's a
that's a big one.
That is a big one.
It is, and they all weave together. It's not like one is more important. I mean,
Totally.
Commitment, I say, is the cornerstone. Because if you don't have it, then it doesn't
foundation.
matter
Yeah.
what else
Gone.
is there,
Absolutely. You're gone.
right? But the others, they all weave into each other. We kind of play that game in the webinars that we do in our membership program, and we say, all right, we're talking about this pillar tonight, but how does it relate to the others, and how
Sure.
what's the connection? It's fun to do that. And one thing that we talk about a lot in our podcast is called spillover thinking, and we're big proponents. We say that your marriage is your number one human relationship. So if it's not the most important human relationship, then there's something in these other pillars that are messed up, because you have to really have that focus first. It's all about prioritization. You got to
Sure.
prioritize that person above all other people.
Right.
Otherwise, there's going to be issues.
Yes.
But success in this relationship, I feel, spills over into other areas of your life. So if it's the center of your being and what you're doing, there's so much good. My goal is to pour so much into my wife that she's like, I can't contain it. Well, what happens? It spills over to everybody else she comes into contact with. It could be family, it could be your church, it could be work, it could be our kids. So I'd love to ask the question to you all: how does the goodness of your relationship spill over into other areas of your lives?
Well, I think, just seeing how our daughters have grown up and them seeing good, positive role models of, couples that play together, stay together, and have fun together, I think they are very selective in who they allow to be romantically involved with. Our oldest daughter's 21. She's had a great boyfriend for many years. I'm sure very, very soon they'll probably be engaged. And I know, it's coming, right? But it's really cool that they get a chance to see how because we didn't have the best role models as far as relationships were growing up.
Right.
So for us to be able to pass that on to our kids, it shows them that, trust yourself first, and, you can love whoever you want to love. Just make sure you give it 100% of your effort. And I think that's cool to be able to pass that along to our kids.
I think something that we pass along is we both have a value of generosity. Like, we're both very generous. And that spills over into everybody in our lives. So, we'll surprise our team and take them all out to dinner. We've had opportunities to really help some underprivileged kids have some pretty incredible experiences through our generosity. And it's just like, we're so happy loving life that we want that to spill over into other people so that they can experience it as well. So I think, wouldn't you say generosity spills over?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also leave them better than you found them. Like,
Yeah.
when I go through, I chat up, taxi drivers, I chat up
True.
people at the grocery store. I'm always like talking to them. And my daughters, during the pandemic, they really retreated inward, and they really didn't want to put themselves out there as much anymore. And they would see me having conversations with people, once the pandemic lifted, then they'd be like, I can't believe you could just talk to people like that. How do you do that? And I'm an insecure person, but I lead with security, if that makes sense. I try to put myself out there, but I'm also just understanding that I do have some things that I'm working on behind the scenes. But I will always leave them better when you found them. And in my work, when I was doing customer service, I was answering a lot of emails. I would always, the email never died with me was one of my tenets, because I would always say, even if it was, thank you so much, make it a blessed day, make it a great day. If they sent back you too, I'd be like, hey, right back at you. I would never let the email die with me, because I always want to leave people better than when I found them. And I think that, along with
That's a
generosity,
spillover,
is a big
That's definitely a
spillover. Yeah,
spillover.
definitely generosity, though. I love
Yeah.
that you brought that up. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys would get along good. I think you speak to everyone and anyone.
I try.
Always. And
It's
I
more
love
fun.
it.
Life,
I
the
love
learn
it.
so
checkout
much
line,
about
Learn
people.
so
the
much.
woman
You
behind
too.
you. I just
Yes.
you gotta. Life's too short not to engage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And find the good in somebody in the opportunity. And I love my kids would, oh, Dad, please,
They
no.
get embarrassed.
They
Or
do.
if a drink or the food came to the table and it wasn't right, used to be in the restaurant business, like, oh, Dad, please don't send it. No, don't send it. No, because they were so embarrassed of what I was going to say
Yes.
or do.
Right.
And but whether a good song comes on, I'll be dancing and getting someone to dance this with me? And, it's just
yes.
all that stuff. It's
Yeah,
fun.
that's what TikTok's so great. I can embarrass myself on TikTok. My daughter can film me and go viral with something I do that's just weird. Hey, I'm here for it. No, I'm here for it. Like, hey, whatever you need me to do. So that's great.
Well, I have a fun question for you.
All right, let her rip.
Ready?
We're ready.
We're gonna go with you first.
Okay, sounds good. Oh man, I'm nervous now.
If you had to go back in time and give your unmarried self a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Oh, wow, yeah. So it would probably be just understand that you'll get there, meaning that there were times when I felt completely incompetent in my relationship. I didn't have a lot of relationships. I maybe dated 3 or 4 people before I met Steph, so I wasn't really out there as much. So I think for me, just knowing that you're going to make mistakes, understand that it's not a reflection of the kind of person you are, because you are a good person. Just know that you can work through them with effective communication, and don't be too hard on yourself.
That's a big one. Don't be too hard on
be
him. If
too
you
hard
haven't
on yourself.
noticed, he's very hard on himself.
I'm self-deprecating. It's supposed to be funny.
No, you're so hard on yourself. Okay, I was trying to think of my answer as he was answering, and now it's left me.
Your
So
unmarried self, you're going back, you're putting your hands on your shoulders, and you're saying, Steph, this is what you need to know.
These questions are always so hard for me. My hands on my shoulders, unmarried self, what would it be?
Or watch out, or hey, do this differently, or think about this, or don't think about that, or...
In terms of relationship, I think it would be when people show you who they are, believe them the first time.
Oh, that's great.
I think that might be, and it doesn't pertain to our relationship
No.
necessarily, but it does pertain to a lot of the relationships that I had early on. But I think that has been a huge life lesson for me. Like when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Like I was a tragic hope addict, hoping someone would change so that I wouldn't have to have a hard conversation, or giving someone the benefit of the doubt so that I wasn't uncomfortable about what was going on. So I think that's it for me. When someone shows you who they
Opium is a dangerous drug.
addict,
I
man.
hope, right? Because you want you to be altruistic and expect the good. So, and I was going to clarify, but it's so to make sure we get it right. So when someone would do or say something and it said, gosh, at least that says to me this, you didn't want to believe that.
Correct.
You want to say, well, no, maybe it was something else, or
justify it away,
another
make
chance, or
excuses
gosh, that's
for
not who they
them.
really are.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
I think that your future self would probably also say, man, you're about to hit the jackpot, so buckle up.
You're probably right, honey. You're probably right.
Because I know mine would. Mine would have said that.
Definitely.
Man, your life's about to change, pal. This is going to be some good stuff here. Buckle up, buddy.
Wait for the goodness, because it's coming.
That's right. That's right. It's all good all the time.
No more hoping.
No more hoping.
Yeah. And I you know what? So I did think of another one. That adversity is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That adversity is not a bad thing,
That's true.
right? Like you're not a victim.
I think you have to go through
You're not a victim.
some adversity,
Right.
in every
That's how you learn.
relationship.
That's how you grow.
Yeah, for sure.
There's opportunity in adversity.
Yes, there
There's
is.
an invitation. in
Invitation.
adversity.
There we
I'm
go.
remembering
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
New post-it
That's
note.
why this is so great, because we learn so much
Yeah.
from couples. Everybody brings something to the table that we can share with our listeners, and they can take away those pearls. And
Yeah, it's never. I
And
mean,
use
there's
them in
always
their own
there's
relationships.
themes, but there's always new stuff, and so you guys have been so gracious to be genuine and open and share with us and our listeners, and we're so grateful. If people want to learn more about who you are and what you do, where should they go? What's the best place for people to find you?
We have ourselves a fantastic podcast. It's called the Successful Mind Podcast, and it's really about understanding who you're being is what's creating your results. So it's really about how you think about things and how that shows up in the world. So it's a fantastic podcast. It's at thesuccessfulmind.com, and then I also have an Instagram account at Steph Tuss.
Yeah.
You're currently not on social media.
I am not. I took a hiatus from social media right before the last election, so I'm really not out there. But I would definitely have people go to the successfulmindpodcast.com, check that out. Steph's, on there. The gentleman we work with, David, is on there. I'm on there. Yeah. Add some lightness to the conversation. It is a lot of fun. We're getting a lot of really good results from that, but I would definitely do that. And the company we work for is called Life Is Now, which I think is a perfect segue into what it is that we're trying to do. We're just trying to help people become the best versions of themselves, and whether that means they're running their own business or becoming, entrepreneurs, leaving corporate world, whatever it might be, we just want to help as many people as possible. We got a big mission.
Yeah, we do.
Big mission.
Sounds like it. You've been mixing it up and doing a lot of successful things on a lot of fronts, and we're grateful that you took time out of your day to come spend some time with us.
Super fun.
And share. So thank you. You on so many levels. Our first live interview in our new studio. Our first time together doing it's been over a year since we've been in the studio like this. So we're grateful. We've done a lot of remote stuff, but it's so much more fun to be sitting across the table from great people. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. I mean, what you two are doing, I've listened to some of your back catalog of your podcasts over the course of the last year, and you really are making a big impact in people's lives. And I think it's just wonderful. So keep putting your message out there, keep writing your books and emulating your great relationship for others, because it really is a guiding light. And I think we can all learn something from it.
Thank you.
This has been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you for your
We're going to listen to your podcast and look at more of your stuff, and I know we're going to connect again soon. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.